Um, Hi everyone. Thanks for inviting me. And first of all, I think this applause should be as well for you, for waking up and getting here so early to meet and to learn together. And now I have a question for you. What games do you remember from your childhood? You can shout.
Lego. Mario.
Great. What else?
Memory.
Memory game. Great.
Ärger dich nicht.
Okay, good. Seems like we are all awake. I remember that this was one of my favorite games. And now it actually, Scrabble, right? Now it actually makes sense to me because I love typography and type design. And sometimes when I'm at a restaurant and menu is set in an interesting or beautiful typeface, I actually have to be reminded by my friends that letters are meant to be read, not looked at. In fact, working with fonts is what I do for a living. Maybe you have heard of a profession called type designer. It's a person who designs typefaces, fonts. And I'm not exactly a type designer. I came to Berlin to work as a font engineer at Monotype. So besides being able to design typefaces, I am the one who's making sure that the font works perfectly in all digital environments. Recently, I specialize in variable fonts. And what I do is quite technical as well, so forgive me if I throw a few numbers and bits of code here and there. Okay, let's get started with today's topic, game. Today's topic is game. And game is an organized play with some defined rules. When I was little, those were my buddies with whom I played. And as every kid, we would come up with our own games, with our own rules. And it allowed us to explore the world, to be creative and to learn. And as kids, we pretty quickly discovered that even though our imagination is almost unlimited, there were indeed some rules we couldn't change. We called them Unchangeable Rules of the real world. And what we discovered? We discovered that any object cannot truly disappear. Toys usually were changing the owner, they were not disappearing. Each of an object is one of its kind. Even if we would have the same model of the same type of a toy, it would be something different, right? Copying anything in the real world is quite tricky. Some materials are hard to change. So if you would carve something like a bird in wood, you cannot just turn it into plastic, which was quite disappointing at times. Two things cannot really occupy the same space, no matter how hard you try. And unless it's a soap bubble, it's hard to scale anything. But then something changed. We discovered the digital. God, we love that. We could play in totally new ways. And it turned out that unchangeable rules of the real world doesn't often apply to the virtual world. What are attributes of a digital object? It can be edited, or deleted, or replicated. It can be easily replaced, most of the cases. An object in a digital environment can occupy the same space as another object, can be scaled, and one can have several lives, if you're lucky. Oh, actually, I realized you don't see much here, so I'm gonna read louder. Because I am a font engineer, I'd like to talk to you today about text and type and some of its rules. Type design used to be something very static. After typeface was designed and cut in metal or wood, it was very difficult, obviously, to adjust anything. Then after the sorts were set, it was also quite a lot of work to make any changes. And we still think about fonts as something static. But typography is becoming more and more dynamic and interactive now, and technology makes it easier. It's normal for us that text can be easily edited, replaced, or scaled. Text most often functions today as a digital object. But what about the typeface? Replacing is easy. Editing, that's quite tricky. We leave that to type designers. But scaling, sounds easy, right? Now, let's consider those 3 letters. First, looks kind of friendly, like a bubble or a balloon maybe. Middle one looks like a text letter. It's more typical. It can remind us of a book, for example. And third, that one looks a little spooky. It maybe reminds us of a horror movie. But what about now? Now, this friendly one looks a little scary, like a big black mass staring at us. I don't feel so comfortable looking at it. Now, when you look at this one, it doesn't look so scary anymore. In this scale, it looks even cute. Maybe we can imagine it holding it on our hands, like a little creature, a little insect. Still awake. That's good. You know, in our everyday life, we're already so used to the concept of changing scale. We use that pinch and unpinch gesture and it all the time to zoom in and zoom out on our devices, and it feels so normal, right? Changing scale changes our perception and can have an impact on our emotions. It's one of the most fundamental design tools. And however, even if the concept of changing scale is important and so present, it is not so easy to make fonts scalable in an appropriate way. I'm talking about the concept of an optical size. This concept refers to something different than simply increasing or decreasing the size of the letter form. It's all about the size of a text. Don't worry, I'm going to show you what this concept is about. I have another question for you now. Which of these is the easiest for you to read? You can shout.
The bottom.
The bottom.
The top.
Who votes for the first?
The first.
Okay. Okay, the second and the third. Okay. I'm not surprised that most of you said it's the top one. You know, these 3 texts are set in 3 different fonts, 3 different styles. All 3 styles belong to one font family, Clifford, designed by Akira Kobayashi. You can see that first is a bit bolder, but it's not everything. This is actually one of the relatively rare examples of a typeface family which supports the idea of optical sizes. So each typeface was designed especially for different text sizes. And the top one was designed to fit small sizes. So this is an example from hot metal print era where size-specific adjustments are visible. What are those adjustments? It's not only that the typeface looks a bit bolder, but overall the spacing is looser, the width of the letter is bigger, details are simpler, and please look at this cue now. On top of all of this, there are more adjustments that type designer needs to apply. This is Clifford again, and here you can see a letter A. This is the smallest, the size intended for small size 6. Green is 9, and red is 18. Those 3 typefaces were designed separately. They were not scaled. And overall, the characters of Clifford 18, it's meant for the headlines for bigger text, they're more expressive. And characters of Clifford 6 are much simpler than Clifford 9. 9 is for text. This typeface is 19 years old and was published here in Berlin by Fontschuh back then, and it's a great digital interpretation of this idea that goes back to the hot metal type era. You know, you can buy these fonts, install them and use, but it would be great if we could have all sizes in between, right? And also if we could use them in a more convenient way, maybe even automatic. So, since 2 years ago, it is actually possible to make such a font, because as Jürgen already told us, we have a totally new font format. This format is called variable font. Here you can see this family Clifford made as a demo variable font, which supports the optical size axis. And the typeface morphs from one size to the other, and it's very smooth change. Now, we can make global adjustments like color of the typeface or letter proportions, but it is also possible to keep distinctive features of each typeface. Like, please have a look at this ampersand, and for smaller sizes it's much simpler, for bigger sizes it flourishes. So this change can be applied whenever type designer decides. Where I can use it? Well, in any cases where longer text is present, or the idea of changing a scale. This project showed me that one of the promises of variable font is a high-quality digital typography that takes less effort for the typographer and the designer. A promise of beautiful typefaces, which will do a little bit of job for you. You know, the vision we have is that the text will perfectly adjust automatically when it's necessary. So I told you about a variable font with an optical size axis, but I haven't told you actually what a variable font is. Do you remember a legend about Hydra? It's this creature from mythology that had one body but many heads, and was able to grow new heads. So let me tell you my version of this story. Let's consider this little dragon, and let's give it a name, Helvetica. Let's add another one, Helvetica condensed. A little bit different, but the same style, right? And another one. Now we have one big Helvetica dragon family. Coming back to that Hydra. Variable font has a common body, but can contain many, many styles and is able to generate everything in between. One of the most obvious advantages of a variable font is that it takes less space. So less files, less kilobytes, and much, much more typographic freedom. By the way, I promised myself that one day I'll come up with a better metaphor for this, but that day it's not today. So there we go. Please let me know later if you have a better idea. Now, variable fonts are supported by Illustrator and Photoshop, and I'd like to show you how you can work with them. So, in character window, you can choose typeface as normally, and then, as before, you can choose any, we call it instance, any style in between, or a weight, right? What is this doing? Sorry.
20 minutes are over.
Right, but you also can make any adjustments in between. So if medium is a little bit too bold and regular is a little bit too light, I can choose anything in between. So for skilled typographers, it's a very good tool and very easy way of working, right? And here maybe I would like to make this headline have a bolder voice, like a stronger voice, right? But in a very heavy weight, it's too big. I don't want to change my text box, but luckily I have this axis, so I can adjust it as needed. Okay, who of you is a web developer? Raise your hand. Okay, we have some. Hi. Who of you have ever made any change, any text set? Who of you ever changed text settings on a website? It can be even a blog. Okay. And who of you have ever been annoyed by a loading time of a website? Okay. So, I have something for you if you're a web developer. This is a slide that shows a difference in weight between a whole family and a variable font that supports the same amount of styles. So as you see here, it's 70% less. So it's smaller size, shorter loading time, and we can enjoy all the styles. These are most common Axis official ones: weight, width, italic, slant, and optical size. Here, in case you missed Typolabs, you can see CSS properties to work with font variations. And I encourage you to use this global settings, not font variation specific. And during Typolabs, we also announced a new open-sourced JavaScript library, variable font JS, that helps you access variable font properties. So we encourage you to use it and let us know if you like it or if you would like anything extra to this. If you don't want to code, I mean, it's fun, but not everyone has to like it. Using variable font and CSS commands, we can create a website template in which it will be so much easier for designers who doesn't write in any programming language to do typographic adjustments without even touching the code. So this is an example from an amazing website I recommend, Axis Praxis. And font works exactly the same like I showed in Adobe applications. But you can also see the CSS properties, and you can copy the settings, send it to developer you work with. If you are interested what's in the font, Axis Praxis, it's also able to show you that. I'd like to show you a side project of one of my colleagues, Bernd Vollmer, from Berlin office. This is a microsite that Bernd created for one of his variable fonts. And he was exploring different CSS text effects which can work with variable font. Of course, one could use GIF instead of variable font for animation, but here advantage is that you can select the text and copy it, and it's easy to edit. I also like this microsite for its design. Nice, playful, yet consistent. It's another experimental site. It's all done with one variable font. This font has 3 axes, weight, width, and slant. And now user can control change by moving cursor to different positions and can click to change the axis. To change the axis, it's like changing the category, right? From width to slant or to weight. Here you can see the circle when I click. Okay. VR, AR, a lot of discussions recently around the topic, and I love it. By the way, who of you ever wear a headset and tried it? Okay, some of you. Rest, I encourage you to try, because this medium you really can understand when you try it, actually. And this is a virtual reality is a technology which allows us to immerse in a digital world. It's an environment built of digital objects, and text is one of them. It's a highly dynamic environment, and among other, concept of changing scale here is very present. And now AR, similar but different. Augmented reality, where 2 environments, real and virtual, are intersecting. What we see is then overlaid with a layer of a digital content. And text here as well appears in different scales and perspective. We interacted with in a totally new ways. We can walk around text, we can almost touch pixels, and when working with text in these environments, we discover totally new dimensions and ways of designing. Here you can see a screen recording from my phone. I'm at the office and I'm testing variable fonts in this environment. I touch screen and I swipe and I can adjust the setting, and working directly with the medium, it's great because you immediately can see the change, and we all know how prototyping is important. So maybe I hate this color, maybe the shadow is too far, but at least I can see. And it helps me to make appropriate design decision. So to sum up, variable font is a single object, single entity, which allows typographic expression under programmatic control in a digital medium. And using sensors, actuators, and self-learning algorithms, together with variable font technology, interactivity is easier to achieve than ever. Most common smartphone devices have now 8 to 12 sensors. Just imagine what we could do. For example, the typeface in your weather app could get bolder as the temperature gets higher, like now here in this room. Or it can react to your face expression, like here. So stay tuned, because all industry is working hard to provide you with beautiful variable fonts and new solutions for emerging technologies. And even if you don't consider yourself a geek, I'd like to encourage you and go play with these new technologies. Make projects with variable fonts maybe, because I really believe that technology, culture, and typography only improves when lots of people are working together. Here are some links I recommend to you if you want to explore the topic more. And now, time for questions.
Can you go back?
No!